The year is 2025, and the most important deal in modern economic history just expired. Right now, most people have no idea that the foundation of their entire lifestyle has been pulled out from under them. If you're not paying attention, you're about to watch your savings shrink, your paycheck lose power, and your standard of living collapse, all in real time. For the past 50 years, every barrel of oil sold on Earth was priced in US dollars. Every country needed dollars to buy energy. That single agreement created artificial demand for American currency, making the United States the most powerful nation on the planet, even while producing less and owing more. But that system, the one that quietly held up the entire American empire, just ended. And no one is telling you, not the media, not your politicians. Because if people understood what really happened, they'd realize that the America they grew up in is already gone. The petrodollar just died, and with it, the dollar's global dominance. Most people won't see it coming, but the few who do are already moving their money, securing their assets, and preparing for the world that comes next. The question is, will you? Because once this shift begins, there's no going back. To understand why this collapse is so massive, you need to know where it began. The story starts in 1971, when President Richard Nixon shocked the world by cutting the dollar's tie to gold. For decades, the dollar had been backed by real value, gold stored in U.S. reserves. But that night, Nixon went on television and announced that America was temporarily closing the gold window. It was no longer backed by anything real, just paper and promises. That move created a huge problem. Why would foreign governments keep holding U.S. dollars if they were backed by nothing? Why would global trade continue using a currency based only on faith? The answer came 3 years later. In 1974, U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger flew to Saudi Arabia and made a deal that would change the world. Saudi Arabia, the largest oil exporter on earth, agreed to price every drop of its oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. No euros, no gold, no exceptions. In return, the United States promised military protection, weapons, and guaranteed security for the Saudi regime. Through OPEC, that same deal spread across nearly every major oil-producing nation, from Kuwait to Nigeria to Venezuela. Oil for dollars, dollars for oil. This wasn't just clever diplomacy. It created artificial global demand for the U.S. dollar. If Japan wanted oil, it needed to buy dollars first. If Germany wanted to fuel its economy, it needed dollars. Even China's industrial boom depended on buying dollars before it could buy energy. That system turned the dollar into the backbone of global trade. It allowed the U.S. to print limitless money, run up enormous debts, and live beyond its means, while the rest of the world needed dollars just to keep running. Inflation was exported abroad, while cheap goods flowed back into America. For 50 years, that single deal powered the U.S. economy more than any army, any factory, or any technology ever could. The petrodollar wasn't just an agreement. It was the invisible engine of American dominance. Every empire believes its foundation will last forever, until it doesn't. In 2023, Saudi Arabia quietly announced something that should have been front-page news around the world. They would not renew the petrodollar agreement. No press conference, no warning, just silence. The deal that once tied the value of oil to the U.S. dollar had expired, and the global order shifted overnight, but most people never heard a word about it. Mainstream media ignored it. Politicians stayed silent. And while the public went on with their lives, the world's financial elite started to move. Inside central banks and global summits, the message was clear. The dollar's foundation had cracked. Saudi Arabia began building new alliances, strengthening ties with China, Russia, and India. They joined BRICS, a coalition of nations openly challenging U.S. economic dominance. Soon after, they began accepting payments in other currencies. China started buying oil in yuan. India paid in rupees. Other nations began discussing trade in a mix of currencies, even gold. Each decision, each quiet shift, chipped away at the dollar's dominance. It was no longer the currency everyone needed. The world's largest oil exporters were no longer loyal to it. And without that forced demand, the dollar's power began to fade, slowly, invisibly, but inevitably. By the time most Americans realize what happened, the transformation will already be complete. The petrodollar didn't just expire, it was replaced. And the U.S. lost its single greatest source of global control. What followed was a chain reaction the world couldn't ignore. For the first time in half a century, countries began cutting their exposure to the U.S. dollar, fast. In the year 2000, over 70% of the world's foreign reserves were held in dollars. By 2020, that number had dropped to 59%, and by 2024, it had fallen below 55%. That might sound like a small shift, but in the world of global finance, it's a freefall. Central banks are dumping U.S. debt and buying gold at record levels. China has offloaded more than $300 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds since 2021. Russia got rid of almost all its dollar reserves after the 2014 sanctions. India is now trading directly in rupees, skipping the dollar altogether. Brazil and Argentina are doing the same with their local currencies. Even longtime allies like France have started cutting dollar holdings. The message is clear. The world no longer trusts the dollar. And they're proving it with their actions. For decades, the dollar's power came from belief, the shared assumption that it was stable, untouchable, eternal. But that belief is breaking. The emperor has no clothes, and everyone finally sees it. The dollar is backed by nothing but confidence, and confidence is collapsing. When that happens, it doesn't matter what the charts say or how many speeches the Federal Reserve gives. Once faith in a currency disappears, it's over. That's what history teaches, and that's what's happening right now. The cracks are spreading through the global system, and the collapse is no longer theoretical. It's already begun. This isn't just a story about global trade or central banks. It's about your life, your paycheck, your savings, and the cost of everything you rely on. For decades, the dollar's strength didn't come from productivity or hard work. It came from the artificial demand created by the petrodollar system. As long as the world needed dollars to buy oil, America could print money without immediate consequence. But now, that demand is vanishing. And when the world stops needing dollars, all those trillions that were printed and held overseas will start flooding back home. That's how inflation truly begins. Not the 6 or 8% headlines you've seen, but the kind that wipes out middle-class savings in months. Imagine prices for fuel, electronics, medicine, and food doubling before your next paycheck, because almost everything you use, from your phone to your car, is made or sourced overseas. When the dollar weakens, imports explode in price. Your savings lose value faster than you can spend them. Your retirement account becomes a joke. And the government, they can't stop it. Raising interest rates crashes the economy and makes debt payments impossible. Printing more money only makes inflation worse. It's a no-win scenario, and the people in charge know it. That's why they're staying quiet, hoping the public won't notice until it's too late. Because if everyone understood what was coming, if everyone realized that the dollar's power was built on a deal that just expired, panic would spread overnight. The truth is, the storm isn't coming. It's already here. You just haven't felt the full force of it yet. When the world's richest people start moving their money, you should pay attention, because the smartest investors on earth aren't waiting for a headline to tell them what's happening. They're already preparing for it. Look at where the money is going. Billionaires are quietly buying farmland. Bill Gates now owns more farmland in the United States than anyone else. He's not trying to be a farmer. He's protecting his wealth with something that always holds value: food and land. Ray Dalio, one of the most successful hedge fund managers in history, has been warning about the dollar's collapse for years. He's shifted large portions of his fund into gold and foreign currencies. Even Warren Buffett, long considered a believer in America's economic strength, has been moving Berkshire Hathaway's money into foreign stocks and commodities. And they're not alone. Central banks around the world are doing the same thing. In 2023 alone, they bought over 1,000 tons of gold, the most in decades. China, India, Turkey, and even Poland have all been stockpiling physical gold while cutting back on U.S. debt. They know what's coming. They see that the dollar's global dominance is ending, and they're not taking chances. Even major corporations are quietly hedging their bets. Tesla, MicroStrategy, and other companies have moved parts of their reserves into Bitcoin and alternative assets, not because they believe in crypto ideology, but because they don't trust the dollar anymore. These aren't conspiracy theorists or doomsday preppers. They're the most informed, financially connected people on Earth. They're not talking, they're acting, and every move they make sends a clear message. The dollar's time is up. Meanwhile, the average person is still being told to stay invested, to trust the system, and to think long term. But by the time the public catches on, the elite will have already left the burning building. When the petrodollar dies, it doesn't just end one system. It triggers a chain reaction that can't be stopped. The first domino has already fallen, and now the rest are lining up. It starts with oil-producing nations accepting other currencies. China is already buying Saudi oil in yuan. India is paying in rupees. Every new deal like that weakens global demand for the dollar. Next comes the sell-off. Countries holding massive dollar reserves don't want to be the last ones stuck holding the bag. So they start selling their U.S. Treasury bonds. Russia already did this years ago. China is doing it slowly but steadily. Others will follow. When they sell, bond prices collapse and interest rates spike. Higher interest rates make America's enormous debt impossible to sustain. The U.S. already owes more than $36 trillion. Interest payments alone are closing in on $1 trillion per year. If those rates keep climbing, the government can't pay its bills without printing even more money. And when they print, inflation accelerates. Prices rise. People demand higher wages. Businesses raise prices again to cover the costs. The spiral begins. Confidence in the currency erodes, and soon the world starts looking for alternatives. Some turn to gold, some turn to foreign currencies, some turn to crypto, but they all turn away from the dollar. That's when the real crisis begins. A currency collapse triggers a debt crisis. A debt crisis triggers a banking crisis. And when banks fail, it turns into a political crisis. People can't withdraw money. Governments can't pay salaries. Food prices soar. The entire system starts to break apart. This isn't theory. It's history repeating itself. Venezuela went from stable to hyperinflation in 5 years. Turkey's lira lost 80% of its value in a decade. Argentina has collapsed so many times, no one keeps count anymore. Now imagine that kind of shock hitting the world's biggest economy. When confidence dies, there are no brakes. Everyone tries to get out of dollars at once, but there won't be enough exits, and that's when panic becomes policy. Governments freeze accounts, they restrict transfers, they call it stabilization, but it's really control. Because once the collapse begins, power shifts from the people to the state. And by then, it's already too late to run. What's happening now isn't new. It's the same story every empire has lived through. The names change, the flags change, but the pattern never does. 400 years ago, Spain ruled the world through silver. The Spanish silver dollar was once the most powerful currency on earth, until endless wars and debt buried the empire. Then came the Dutch. Their guilder dominated global trade in the 1700s until greed and overreach brought them down too. After that, Britain rose with the pound sterling, running an empire that spanned the globe. But by the end of World War II, Britain was broke, its colonies gone, and its currency stripped of global status. The torch passed to the US dollar, and for 80 years it reigned supreme. But every one of those currencies followed the same fatal path: expansion, debt, money printing, collapse. And now it's America's turn. The U.S. has spent decades fighting endless wars, running massive deficits, and printing trillions in fake money to keep the illusion of wealth alive. The symptoms are everywhere: crumbling infrastructure, unaffordable housing, record debt, and an economy addicted to easy money. The diagnosis is clear: terminal decline. What makes this moment different is that there's no clear replacement waiting in line. When the Dutch fell, the British took over. When the British fell, the Americans stepped in. But today, no one trusts any single currency to lead the world. The euro is weak and divided. China's yuan is controlled by an authoritarian regime. Crypto is unstable, and gold can't fuel a digital economy. We're entering an era with no global anchor, a multipolar world where currencies compete, exchange rates swing wildly, and trust disappears. It's not a smooth transition. It's chaos. Trade will shrink, prices will fluctuate overnight, and the global system that ran on predictable order will give way to something far more unstable. History shows that this kind of shift doesn't take decades. It happens fast. Venezuela, Turkey, Argentina, they all thought it couldn't happen to them, right up until it did. Now, America is standing at that same edge. The difference is scale. When the dollar goes, it won't just be one country falling. It will be the entire world financial system reshaping itself in real time. Every empire believed it was special. Every empire thought it was immune to history. And every one of them was wrong. The U.S. is no exception. It's not the first. It's not the last. It's just next in line. Most people will ignore every warning until it's too late. They'll tell themselves things will go back to normal, that the government will fix it, that this can't happen here. But normalcy bias is deadly. History proves it. The people who survive a collapse aren't the ones who panic. They're the ones who prepare before anyone else. So what can you do now? First, understand that the system can't be saved. The math doesn't work. The debt is too large, and the dollar's dominance is already gone. Acceptance isn't fear, it's clarity. Second, start protecting your wealth from paper promises. Diversify out of dollar-only assets. Throughout history, people have survived currency collapses by holding things with real value: land, commodities, foreign currencies, precious metals, and productive assets like businesses or farms. These are things that hold value no matter what happens to the dollar. Third, reduce your debt and increase your flexibility. When money loses value, being debt-free means freedom. You don't want to depend on banks or credit when the system starts breaking down. Keep your expenses light and your skills portable. The goal isn't to be rich on paper. It's to be resilient in reality. Fourth, build community. In every economic collapse, survival comes down to people, not portfolios. Your neighbors, your friends, your local networks will matter more than any stock or bond. When institutions fail, communities endure. And finally, educate yourself. Everything happening now is public knowledge. The petrodollar's history, the decline in dollar reserves, the rise of BRICS. It's all out there. But most people are too distracted to look. The truth isn't hidden, it's ignored. The people who act on this information will come out on the other side stronger. Those who don't will wake up one morning and realize their money, their savings, and their country's power are gone, and no one warned them in time. Preparation isn't paranoia. It's the only way to stay ahead of a storm that's already begun. History has shown this story countless times, and now it's playing out again right in front of us. The question is simple. Will you watch it happen, or will you be ready when it does? The petrodollar just died, and with it, the illusion of American invincibility. For 50 years, the U.S. printed wealth out of thin air while the rest of the world traded real goods for paper promises. That era is over. The empire's foundation has cracked, and everything built on top of it, the markets, the jobs, the comfortable stability, is now trembling. You're living through the same pattern that ended every empire before this one. Rome debased its currency. Spain drowned in debt. Britain lost its empire to endless wars and collapsing confidence. And now it's happening again. Different actors, same outcome. The people in charge will tell you, everything is fine. They'll say inflation is temporary, the dollar is strong, and the system is stable. But you know better now. Because history isn't repeating, it's rhyming, and it's rhyming loudly. The dollar's reign isn't ending because of bad luck or conspiracy. It's ending because math and history say it must. Every system built on endless debt and blind trust eventually falls. And this time, there's nowhere left to hide from the consequences. But here's the truth no one wants to say: collapse isn't the end, it's a reset. The people who see it coming, who adapt, who prepare, are the ones who rise when the dust settles. The rest will spend years wondering how everything disappeared so fast. So ask yourself right now, are you ready? Because ready or not, it's here. The petrodollar is gone. Your dollar is next. And when the world realizes what that truly means, it won't be slow. It will be sudden. It will be loud. And it will change everything. If this opened your eyes, remember, the answers to what's coming next aren't hidden in the future. They're written in the past. And now that you know where to look, you'll never see the dollar the same way again. Subscribe, stay alert, and pay attention, because history is repeating right before your eyes.